Hey guys, welcome back to Dream Analytica. Today we're going to cover a really big topic, but I think it's one of the most important topics in Jungian psychology and one that you must learn if you want to get good at analytical psychology or Jungian psychology. And what we're dealing here with is cognitive functions, and it's such a big topic. I don't think I could cover everything in one video, but I'm going to try my best to convey the most important aspects, the foundational aspects of cognitive functions. And it's so important for you to learn cognitive functions, not just in terms of psychology, but in practice for everyday life. And the reason why it's so important and will help you immensely, and I can attest this myself, that it is incredibly powerful and incredibly helpful in terms of everyday life, is that it teaches you how other people perceive the world. It gets you out of your own head, and possibly if you're a bit of a shy person, or if you're a people pleaser, or if you suffer from social anxiety or things like that, it really helps because it helps you understand that people think differently, people feel differently, people see the world from a different perspective than what you may think they are thinking. And a lot of how we perceive other people is mainly through projections. So we're really projecting our own feelings onto them and thinking that we know what they're thinking. I can guarantee you from my practice, from personal experience, from simply speaking to the other person and validating or verifying aspects of what they are thinking, it's mostly always wrong. What we think, what other people are thinking. And I would know. So I'm an INTP, and we actually have the tendency to overanalyze things due to the nature of our thinking, our cognitive functions. We have introverted thinking as our dominant function that really gets us into our own head. So we spend a lot of time in our own head, and we overanalyze the out of everything. So learning cognitive functions will help you not just in terms of psychology, but it'll help you build great, healthy relationships with other people. It'll teach you a lot about yourself and how you function. It'll just make you a more confident person and a more whole person, because then you understand what your unconscious functions are, and therefore you could better integrate them. There's something really cool too about it, is that if you really learn about these functions, and not in a theoretical way, but in practice, you could learn to utilize these functions like superpowers. Like if you really understand within yourself what intuition is, I mean, you could use that you could learn how to use that, possibly learn how to listen to it better if you're more of a sensation type. It has just an immense amount of benefits for you. I mean, intuition is so powerful, and it's gotten me through life. And I know I'm digressing here, but I really want to highlight the importance of understanding cognitive functions. So I hope you stick to the end, because it really will help you. However long this video is going to be, it's really going to help you throughout life. So a small amount of your time, and if you just learn the foundations of cognitive functions by starting here and probably expanding outward later to other material, uh, it's an investment. So you're really investing your short time for your whole life. Yeah, if you have questions, please ask. So what are cognitive functions? And it's really important to know that the MBTI derived from Carl Jung's cognitive functions. And we'll probably get into that a little more later. So cognitive functions in Jungian psychology are the mental processes that individuals use to perceive and judge information, including thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. They shape how we interact with and understand the world. And it's really cool, if you are into Jungian psychology, of how Carl Jung found out that we had these four functions. He initially started with introversion and extroversion, which, by the way, he invented. A lot of us don't know that, but he actually coined the term introvert and extrovert. And we use it so commonly nowadays, we don't even think about its origins. It derived from Carl Jung. And that's just how big of a personality he was, how prominent of a psychologist he was, but he's not as well known as maybe Freud or some of the other ones. So yeah, Carl Jung is really cool. And so what we want to get into now is introversion and extroversion. That's like the starting point. Now, if you take in the MBTI, we're organized into two categories, introverts or extroverts, and that usually starts with an I or an E. Introversion, according to Jungian psychology, is a personality trait where individuals are more focused on their inner thoughts and feelings rather than external stimuli. Introverts tend to recharge by spending time alone, and they often prefer solitary activities over social engagements. It's all about where you draw your energy from, internally versus externally. Introversion is linked to subjectivity, as introverts are more focused on internal thoughts and feelings. And that's one really important aspect to understand in terms of introversion and extroversion, because each function actually has an introverted aspect and an extroverted aspect. It's a dichotomy. So introversion is usually dealing with subjectivity, how the subject perceives the world, as opposed to extroversion, where the subject is perceiving the objective world outside. So subjective inside, objective outside. Extroversion, according to Jungian psychology, is a personality trait where individuals are oriented toward the external world. Extroverts draw energy from social interactions and external activities. They tend to thrive in environments with lots of interaction, stimulation, and social engagements. Extroversion is connected to objectivity, as extroverts are more attuned to external realities and social interactions. So that's a really good starting point for us to understand just how people operate. It's so common nowadays that we group people into either introverts or extroverts, and just that alone really helps us understand not just ourselves, but people in general. There's empathy now. Like, there's understanding between people. Like, oh, that guy's not antisocial, or maybe he is, but we can say that he's just an introvert, or she's just an introvert and prefers more time alone than that person who loves going out to party. And so if you, in a group setting, and you're being peer pressured to do something, if you're an introvert, like to go out or something, I mean, we could easily just explain, no, she's introverted. She would much rather prefer to be with a small group, with a one-on-one, than hang out with a bunch of random people. And there's that understanding. And it's no more about, oh, that dude's weird, or she's weird because she doesn't want to spend time with the party. So just that alone is so powerful. So now if you understand it to a deeper level, with the cognitive functions of thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition, then you can break people down even more, and it becomes more nuanced. You start to see individuality, and you can really see how different people perceive the world, like to be talked to. There's certain language that you might use depending on the personality type. Like if they're more of a thinker, then you probably want to speak to them in a more objective way. But if they're more of a feeler, then you might want to speak to them in a more empathetic way. So I mean, that's incredibly powerful if you're trying to all aspects of life. If you're going to school and you're meeting new people, it teaches you how to read people. Maybe you don't want to gather with the wrong clique, and you want to meet your people. This is a really good way. So if you're an intuitive and you're in school, you could easily find other intuitives simply by asking, and you'd find your clique, because the sensation type will not see the world the same way as the intuitive type. It's really powerful in business, because then you can build really good business relationships. It's extremely powerful in networking. The list goes on. Yeah, maybe I should stop talking about the benefits because there's so many. Now that we've gone through introverted and extroverted, we can move on to the functions. So the first one is thinking. which involves logical analysis and objective decision making. Thinkers prefer using facts and rationality to navigate the world. So there it is. So if you ever are confronted with this person that you don't know, a stranger, and he's seemingly very cold and very logical, well, now you can identify that person as a thinker. The next one is feeling. Centers on personal values and emotional considerations. Feelers prioritize harmony and relationships, making decisions based on personal principles and empathy. There you have that too. So if you see a very warm and kind person that probably cares about the group harmony, that is very considerate of how other people are feeling, you can identify that person as a feeler. And therefore, you would probably not speak in a very harsh and rationalistic manner with a feeler type. So then you probably just made a lifelong friend because you now know how that person likes to be spoken to. And the feeler, because they're empathetic, is going to realize, wow, this person understands me and my language. So, I mean, that's really good. Sensation focuses on tangible sensory information. Sensors are grounded in the present moment, relying on their five senses to interpret reality accurately. So this is I think the first cognitive function that we encounter that deals with time. This is really powerful too. So sensation types are very present oriented, and it depends. The extroverted sensation types, which like to deal with objective reality, as we said about extroversion, really like to deal with their present reality, their present objective reality. Whereas the introverted sensation type, they like to deal with the past, tradition, memories. And that's really powerful too. So, and we'll get to the intuitive type after this, but you'll see that the intuitive type and the sensation type sometimes clash because the intuitive type is thinking about the future, particularly the extroverted intuitive type. And so the sensation type will not understand in the slightest what the hell the intuitive type is speaking about, because they cannot put themselves in the intuitive type's shoes about seeing the future and all the abstract possibilities and events that may come to pass. Sensation types, you can see them all around. They actually comprise the majority of the population. And I like to call them maintainers. So they're really good at maintenance, whereas intuitive types are probably a little better at innovation. So you have a small minority of intuitive types that need to innovate, and more sensation types to maintain the current status quo / inventions that the intuitive type makes. And sensation types are also, like I mentioned, grounded in the present moment. So they are really good with probably like physical activities like sports, getting things done. They're very good at getting things done. And so let's move on to the next one, which is the last one, intuition, which deals with abstract patterns and future possibilities. Intuitives see connections and possibilities beyond the immediate context, often relying on gut feelings and insights. So that's what I meant earlier about the intuitive being the complete opposite of the sensation type. When when the intuitive type and the sensation type speak, it's really one of them is going to have to put a little more energy into trying to lean more towards the other direction. So this intuitive type sort of has to ground themselves and not speak about things that the sensation type will just not get. And the sensation type gets really frustrated whenever the intuitive type starts speaking of all these things that are possible. But they can also be quite complementary too. So the sensation type may be actually wanting to have the capacity to have foresight. And so they might actually be a good pairing in terms of a relationship if the sensation type is more open-minded and the intuitive type is a little more grounded. So now that we've gone through the 4 cognitive functions, and by the way, I did mention the MBTI earlier. The cognitive functions are the precursor to the MBTI. If you know your MBTI personality type, like INTP or INFJ or something like that, you could simply go on Google and type what your cognitive function stack is. And the cognitive function stack is pretty much our cognitive functions in an arrangement in terms of our most dominant function to our most inferior function. So for example, I, as an INTP, my dominant function, as I mentioned, is introverted thinking. Now, to counterbalance that introverted thinking in terms of typology, you have to weigh that with its opposite. And its opposite would be another judging function, which is extroverted feeling. And by the way, you have four functions in your stack, and I won't get into the other 4, so you have 8 total, but the other 4 are called shadow functions, and that's just a whole nother video. It's super complicated, but we have 4. So we have a dominant function, auxiliary function, child, and anima animus function. That's the way we categorize them. So our 4th function is the most unconscious, our dominant function is the most conscious. And the way it works is, as like I said, a balancing. And if I lead with introversion, it's going to be extroverted, introverted, extroverted again. They act as counterbalances to each other. So my 2nd function would be extroverted intuition. So that's the N in INTP. So to balance the extroverted intuition, I'll let you have a guess, and this is how you can predict personality types, what the counterbalance of extroverted intuition would be. And if you guessed a perceiving function, which would be sensation, you're right. So it would be introverted sensation as my 3rd function. So those 2 balance each other, and the other 2 balance each other. And that's how you really want to think about psychology. It's all about balancing. It's really a balancing act. Dreams are a balancing act with conscious reality and the unconscious. That's the foundation of cognitive functions and our stack. So now we're going to get into extroverted versus introverted cognitive functions, because it's so, that's why this topic is so big, because it's really nuanced. So yes, there is an extroverted thinking and an introverted thinking. There are 2 ways of thinking. So let's get into it. And if any of this sounds a bit complicated, I am rushing through and I am sort of summarizing, but at least you get some of the ideas that you can do your own research and dig deeper into more of what this is talking about, particularly Carl Jung's own book on personality types. So extroverted thinking focuses on organizing and structuring the external world efficiently. It values logic, rules, and objective criteria to make decisions and solve problems. So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, about objective versus subjective. And if you just have that in mind, this becomes really easy. So just if someone's extroverted, they deal with more objective reality, tangible reality. If someone's more introverted, they deal with more abstraction and more subjective. They're dealing subjectively about within themselves. So it's about in and out. Let's go back to extroverted thinking, and how do you identify that? So people who have extroverted thinking, you can see them as really leader types. Like, these people tend to make really good leaders because they're really good at organizing things. So they could be like an ENTJ who has extroverted thinking, really good at leading the way, leading a group and motivating the group, doing things in a very rational and organized way. They have a very structured life and structured approach to life. So that's how you can identify extroverted thinker out in reality, is if they're very organized, if they're very rational in their thinking. I would say less abstract than the introverted counterpart. And Here's some insight that you probably will not find anywhere else, because it took me a really long time to find. Extroverts are really easy to identify in reality, whereas introverts are very hard to type in reality. Obviously, the reason why is because the introvert is doing it subjectively, whereas the extrovert is doing it objectively. So they will appear that way, the extrovert. So the way you would want to identify the introvert is with their second function, like I mentioned with mine, would be the extroverted function, right? So the introverted thinker, such as myself, you would identify him or his type based on his second function. I'll start talking about big ideas. I'll start talking about possibilities, endless possibilities, abstract possibilities. I make quite a good investor because I am good at making predictions about the stock market. And that's how you would identify the introverted thinker if they're an INTP, is use their second function. I just wanted to convey that to help you understand what the introverted individual type might be. It's really difficult. Anyway, so the introverted thinker concentrates on internal frameworks and principles. It analyzes concepts deeply, seeking to understand underlying patterns and logical consistency within. So we all know the most famous introverted thinker in the world, in history, and that would be Albert Einstein. He's known for his theories, he's known for his discoveries in physics, and all of that came from his internal framework, from introverted thinking. It actually had nothing to do with objective reality. It all started in his head, and Carl Jung coined a term called active imagination. Einstein coined a term called thought experiments. And I believe they might be the same thing. But it shows you how crazy that even though it's all in this guy's head, it is equivalent to reality. How do you identify the introverted thinker? They're usually in their heads a lot. They're usually scheming, planning, really detached. So if an introverted thinker leads, they're really detached from their emotions. So that's how you would identify an introverted thinker. You would probably appeal less to an introverted thinker if you're always talking about your feelings with them, because they just don't understand. You really want to think of their inferior function as this little baby. It's underdeveloped. So it has no idea of what you're talking about if you say things that deal with emotions. Unless they mature and develop, which is very possible and is actually required towards individuation. Extroverted feeling seeks harmony in relationships and social settings. It is sensitive to others' emotions and strives to meet collective needs and maintain social bonds. You see these people all the time. Nurses, caretakers, people who really care about the group harmony. They could be event planners. Extroverted feelers are empaths. They have the capacity and ability to read other people's feelings and emotions even before the individual themselves know. Extrovert feelers are very kind people, although they do have a very opposite dark side as well. But extroverted feelers, like the INFJ, are very kind people. They actually fit really well with thinkers if the thinker learns how to express their feeling side, which the extroverted feeler can do, really help the introverted or extroverted thinker with their feelings. Yeah, these guys are real empaths, and they just have this warmth presence about them. Like you could talk to them about anything, and they would understand you to a very high degree, probably more than yourself. Yeah, getting into a relationship with an extroverted feeler can be quite nice, I would say, dependent on the fact that you're both mature, as all relationships. But one of the problems with the extroverted feeler is like they're people pleasers too, so they can be serial people pleasers, which could be detrimental. Anyways, the next one is introverted feeling. Focuses on personal values and inner emotional states. It makes decisions based on deeply held beliefs and seeks to align actions with personal integrity. So people with introverted feeling, they might come across as self-centered, or not, I wouldn't say to an extreme, but in a narcissistic way, but I wouldn't use that word. It's more that they're just aligned with their inner values that supersedes other people's values or the group's values. So they're highly individualistic people like INFPs, and they're very in tune with their feelings of a situation, how they judge that situation based on their feelings. They can be quite stubborn if it doesn't align with their personal values. And I just want to go back to saying, like, do you see how powerful this is? If you deal with an introverted feeler and whatever you're trying to sell them or talk to them or maybe change their mind about, it's just not going to work, because they have their inner values set. So they're not going to be convinced if your values don't align with theirs. So that's something you can take into consideration when dealing in a relationship. So an extroverted feeler or someone with extroverted feeling might pair well with someone with introverted feeling in their cognitive stack, yin and yang, because one can compensate for the other. So you could say the extroverted feeler is the giver, and the introverted feeler might be a bit more of a taker. So they would complement each other. I think you could have two givers in a relationship, but it would be quite difficult to have two takers in a relationship. So two introverted feelers, if their values don't align. But if they do align, they actually might fit really well. But here you're getting into so many dynamics about relationships now. So this is really going to help you in terms of finding the right partner in life. And all you have to do is just watch like spend a few minutes of your time watching a video or reading some material about this, but it'll really help you find the right people. Anyways, moving on to the next one. Extroverted sensation engages with immediate environments through the five senses. It enjoys new experiences and is highly responsive to external stimuli, often seeking adventure. So you see these guys all the time. They're skydiving, they're mountain climbing, they're doing BMX, extreme sports. These guys are out there doing something. They're engaging with the world. They're always on taking action. They don't like sitting still or sitting around thinking about things. So the extroverted sensation type probably out traveling or doing something active. But like you see, like we might envy that as introverts, that these people are out doing stuff and probably like sharing it on Instagram and all that. But if you understand cognitive functions, what would his compensation be? So if he's dominant with extroverted sensation, his inferior, do the math, would be introverted, right? Intuition. So he might have a very primitive inner world. It's so dead. So unless he's out doing something, if he ever has to be stuck, or she ever has to be stuck at home, like during the quarantine, can you imagine he has a desolate landscape to go home to? That to me is frightening. Like imagine if you couldn't be alone with yourself, or just sit in a place, meditate. These guys are probably maybe not so great at meditation, but extroverted sensations like to get things done as well. So good pairing for someone who might be a bit too in their head. So if you have, let's say if you're an INFJ and you spend so much time in your head, you forget about your outer reality. The extroverted sensation type might actually complement that by getting you out of your head to do something. And they deal with the present reality, which deals in terms of time. They deal with present reality. So they probably would not enjoy speaking to someone who deals with the future or possibly even the past. They're present oriented. So if you want to identify these guys, they're usually in the moment, very present, taking action. The next, introverted sensation, relies on internal sensory impressions and memories. It compares present experiences with past ones, valuing consistency and traditional ways of doing things. So here, the introverted sensation type is dealing with the past, as opposed to the extroverted sensation type, which deals with the present. These guys And by the way, introverted sensation types are really, they love routine. They love doing things how they've always been done. Tradition. Now, if you meet an introverted sensation type, these are the guys that say, why would you do it that way? It's always been done this way. They always say that. It's always been done this way. And that will be extremely frustrating for the intuitive type, because no, the past is not like the future in the intuitive mind. The future is always changing and completely unpredictable. So no, it's not how it's always been done. You are not the same person you were yesterday. So this introverted sensation type, although that might be a negative, they're really good at making things comfortable. So tradition makes things predictable, which makes things comfortable. So they're really good at creating an environment where you can feel safe and comfortable. Although that might be a double-edged sword, because comfort is where men die, is the saying. Yeah, so in order to progress in life, in order to develop, in order to advance, you need to be uncomfortable. So they're really good at building a nest, a really comfortable nest. They're really good at, if you have more of a feeler, introverted sensation feeler type, like the ISFJ, they're really good at building a nest, creating a home environment where you feel love. And they have, in a negative sense, they are really good at building this web like a black widow. And if you're not careful, and if this ISFJ is not healthy, they will eat you alive. They'll make you comfortable in that nest and eat you alive, meaning prevent you from growing, because they don't like change. So they don't want you to grow out of their nest. They want to keep you in their nest for as long as possible, kind of like a overbearing, devouring mother. By the way, a lot of mothers are ISFJs because of it. Not because of it, but most likely is because ISFJs make great mothers. My mother is an ISFJ. I love ISFJs, by the way. The longest relationship I've been in was with an ISFJ. Yeah, introverted sensation deals with memories as well, so they're really good at recalling experiences. In terms of the feeler type, experiences based on their feeling impression. What did they feel in that past experience? So moving on to intuition. Extroverted intuition explores possibilities and patterns in the external world. It is innovative, seeing connections and opportunities everywhere, and enjoys brainstorming and ideation. So again, Einstein had extroverted intuition because he was an INTP. So extroverted intuition in his second, because he was an introverted thinker first. And then you have his support function or auxiliary, which is extroverted intuition. So that helped, you can see he built the internal framework, and then he can expand that framework outward into infinite possibilities, but grounded in practical solutions. So here his foundation is physics. So he built that framework with the foundation of physics, and then was able to extrapolate that into infinity with his extroverted intuition. And that's what I have too, because I'm an INTP. That's how I see the world. I'm a programmer. I also love psychology, so it really helps build the internal framework and then extrapolate into infinity to see all these different possibilities, which one is most probably going to be true, but grounded. It's really interesting, the visual imagery that I can only speak for myself, but that I see. Like, I can see the future in a way that almost feels tangible to me, and it's very powerful in my opinion. The two combinations, in terms of being able to make predictions, like you can make pretty accurate predictions, which I, not in an arrogant sense, but I have, in terms of the stock market, in terms of the pandemic, in terms of so many aspects of life. The intuition is so powerful, and if you learn how to utilize it better, if you learn how to listen to it, man, it's a very powerful tool to have in your toolkit. And there is a way you have the ability to learn and develop these functions. Remember, cognitive functions or your personality type is not fixed. It does change over time as well. So an introvert may gradually over time, if they just build enough confidence, turn into an extrovert. And that's happened a lot. So why can't you do the same with your other functions? You're more of a feeler. Well, maybe over time, when you develop your thinking capacity, you become more of an ambivert and you're both. Or you may become a thinker. Like, let's say there's a woman who began as a feeler but started her own business and became very successful. Well, she needed to activate her thinking aspect. Now she's become more of a thinking type. So she's more rational with her judgments. She needs to be, because that's how you need to run the business in some aspects. Although I think business is about people, but she needs to crunch the numbers and stuff like that. So she developed to more thinking type. Maybe her mature version of herself is a thinking type. So none of these things are stagnant. They're dynamic, they evolve, they develop, and you can develop these aspects within yourself. And intuition is like a superpower for the individual who doesn't have it or who has it underdeveloped. So the last one is introverted intuition, which delves into insight, internal insights, and visions of the future. It focuses on understanding deeper meanings and long-term implications, often having profound strategic insight. Intuitive introverts are the most difficult individuals I've ever had to understand or try to understand. INFJs and the INTJ. I don't understand how their intuition works because mine is extroverted intuition. And there's something to be said about introverted sensation and introverted intuition. These two are the most difficult types to understand in all of cognitive functions. Introverted intuition is a very difficult thing, and it's very difficult to understand what the INFJ actually sees about the world. But I do have this understanding that they do see things in terms of idealism. So they have an idealized image of whatever they're focusing on, I suppose. And they're going to try their best to get to that idealized version, whether it's of themselves, which is why a lot of INFJ women are very beautiful or fit. Not all, I mean, I'm generalizing here, but it's because they have the idealized image or form. And depending on that form, if they're healthy, is they'll try to have a trajectory in their life to get to that idealized version of themselves. They want to be perfect. They're perfectionists. Introverted intuition is a very tough thing to understand, even for the individual themselves, and they're quite difficult to identify. But I love the INFJ, particularly women, because I have a lot of them in my life. I love the way they see the world. I love how, in a way, they have this innocence about them. Not too unlike the ENFP. But do you see, like, I'm easily able to identify how that person in general behaves just by their personality type. So I can easily, I know what the ENFP behaves like in a general way to say that. But you only get that if you understand the cognitive functions. So it's really just incredibly powerful. And what I'm really trying to teach you here is, based on the dominance of these functions of an individual, you can see how they would like to be spoken to. You can see how they might perceive the world. There's a higher empathy, higher understanding, therefore higher enlightenment on your part. If you understand these things, you're going to get to a place where you practically could read minds. Let's say I want to evoke my extroverted feeling. I already know how that person is going to feel if I do this. If I say this word as opposed to this word, because of my extroverted feeling, which has been integrated, I know how that person's going to feel. So I should probably speak in a more empathetic way, particularly if they're actually a thinking type. The thinking type is actually very sensitive because they have extroverted feeling in their inferior. Whereas the feeler, you could say, might need a bit of hard logic into their lives for more structure, to kind of reorient their minds to say, this is reality, this is feeling. So powerful. I can't tell you. Anyways, so this is the foundation of the cognitive functions and their introverted and extroverted aspect. If you want to know more, go check out my app. I actually have a typology section, and it all relates to dreams, by the way. So you would need to know cognitive functions if you want to interpret dreams or do Jungian analysis or analytical psychology, if you want to practice it. And I can't tell you, it's going to become more and more pronounced, people wanting to know more about their psychology and people wanting to know more about themselves, because I feel like we're headed towards this singularity where it's peak uncertainty and we just don't know where the future is headed. But I think the calling for people to want to know about themselves is increasing over time. So if you do this and you become really good at analytical psychology as a whole, you have the capacity to help so many people. You're going to break cycles, you're going to help your family dynamic, your community, really. And you can read Jungian literature, it really says this, that as long as one person individuates, he changes his entire community, if not society, if not civilization itself. And you can think of Buddha or Jesus or Gandhi. Like, these people were integrated. They've integrated all aspects of themselves and became whole. And so we projected our idea of wholeness onto these people because we lacked it. Whatever is unconscious, we project. So we project the idealized image of the human being onto Jesus, onto Buddha, onto Winston Churchill, onto all the big figures of the past. Hitler. But it's all related. Anyways, go ahead and check out my app. It covers all these topics. I'll maybe give you a preview on the screen of my application that covers all of these functions. It teaches you about cognitive functions. It even shows you which type would be best suited for you. It's not an absolute, but it would be a really good place to start if you're trying to find a partner. Instead of flying blind and wondering whether this person is going to be good for you long term, you know their psychological type now. So that could kind of give you a trajectory or a prediction of, okay, maybe it would work in the beginning because of limerence or infatuation, but long term in a long-term relationship, our ideas are going to clash. Let's say it's a sensation versus intuitive type. And now you know that. Before you didn't. But 5 years down the road, if you didn't know that, you would have wasted 5 years of your life and the relationship would have ended. But if you knew that before, and you would have realized that, oh, our ways of seeing the world are completely bifurcating, are completely different, because they are sensation and I am intuitive. So maybe the intuitive might be better with another intuitive. Anyways, so that's what the app will help you, and it's all in your pocket. So if you're on a date, you could pull it out, ask the person what their personality type is, and then you could just look it up, like, oh, this person's ISFJ. Maybe I should give this a shot because I like how they see the world, or not. But go ahead and check that out, and it's available on the App Store as Dream Analytica. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate everyone who has contributed to my small channel. Even at this point in time, even with just 500 subscribers, I have had so many people reach out to me, email me, request consultations with me, just on this small number. So as it continues growing with your help and sort of spreading, I'm able to reach out to more people and help them, because I have seen the current state of psychology right now, and it is, I think a lot of people are looking for answers. In a way, they're hurting, they're confused. I think Jungian psychology provides sort of rock that we can fall back on, a foundation that we can all fall back on. The more the merrier. So the more people teaching Jungian psychology, the better. And if you spread the word, it teaches other people about Jungian psychology, and that just makes the world a better place, in my opinion. It helps us to increase our consciousness. It is the next stage of psychological development, to become more conscious of psychology. So psychology will play an ever increasing importance in the future, because psychology itself is such a young science. So again, thank you so much for watching, and subscribing really helps me. Thank you.